Welcome, everybody, to another rendition of The Lone Wolf Show. You are watching www.witchcrafttv.online, and I'm The Lone Wolf. And today we're going to talk about pagans in the military. And this particular pagan has been a witch since 1990, I believe. And he is former SSG, retired Army, and a proud pagan. And that's always good conversation. So we welcome one of our pagan heroes right here on Witchcraft TV. Eric, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. My dog broke back into my room. She wants to be on TV. But yeah, doing great, doing great. It's raining, as I know you know, because it's probably raining in Centralia too. Isn't
Yeah, it sure is. Rain like cats and dogs. I think all it does is rain out here.
it? Well, we had that fake spring for a minute, where it
Right,
was
right.
like in the 60s for a second. There we go.
So I'm just going to take a quick minute and I'm sharing some of the feeds to our Witchcraft TV online groups and our teaching groups. And I hope I didn't double share. It looks like that's good. Yeah. So, yeah, you took a breath. I'm glad that you're on. And I really like the idea that you served in the military. I love the idea that you were pagan. I love the idea that you were serving in the military as active military and you were corresponding with some of the active leaders of that time. Is that true?
Oh God, so it has to go way back. So I was I was born here in Skagit County in Washington State, but I was born into a very and still devoutly evangelical family. So the crazy you see in the politics today is what I grew up with. Um, Going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Christian school my entire life, Jim Oswego Bible College for a semester, and then I think I was a break in between there, and then straight to the army, where I never liked evangelical. I was, I guess you could say, a pagan at heart and didn't know it, because even as a child, I would get home from church and go, ugh, and put my play clothes on, and we had 40 acres in the mountains. I'd be out in the woods grounding. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know it was called grounding at the time,
Right.
but so and I recall. So of course you got the Satanic Panic. Really started not just the '90s, but you had the crazy Satanic Panic stuff. I think honestly as early as the '70s,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
because I remember my godmother freaking out over this satanic New Age stuff with the rainbow, and I'm like, oh wait, tell me more. They're freaking out, and I'm going, huh, that sounds kind of interesting. Um, as soon as I reached some would say the age of reason, but as soon as I broke free and was in the army, I was getting my hands on every pagan, Wiccan. I think the first book I picked up actually was Cunningham, Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner, which actually they sold on base.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Good book.
until the evangelicals figured out, hey, there's witchcraft in our military bookstores. We can't have that. But that's a story for another time. Uh, so and even today, I was in 11th Armored Cavalry in Bad Hersfeld, Germany. Started in Stuttgart in 1990 with First 16th Infantry. And at that point, you would call me a learner. I was a studier.
Right.
Every book I could get my hands on. We didn't have internet back then. We didn't get internet until 99, 2000 is really when the internet blew up. And then, oh my God, everything was at my fingertips. Um, so I've got, tarot cards. I've got every pagan book I can find at that time in the libraries. Because even the military libraries, we did have uh, New Age pagan books. Um, so in Bad Hersfeld, I had four roommates in my barracks room, and one of them I got reported. my squad leader came and said, "Private Cooper, you're disturbing your roommates." I'm like, huh? What am I doing? Well, they say you're reading books. I'm like, is that a crime? I light a candle. I read a book. It's about witchcraft. What? Who cares? There's nothing. There's not a damn thing you can do about it. And okay, there wasn't nothing they could do about it. But one of my roommates back then was so terrified about the witch in his room, he kept a knife under his pillow.
Wow.
And him and I are great buddies today. In fact, he just told me the other day, "You need to give me a call and we need to talk about paganism." I'm like, seriously? Okay, whatever. Um, it's so much to dive into. Um, but to keep on going with the story, um, so from 1990, I was mostly studying. I practiced in my dorm, my barracks room. Um, got married, practiced in my home, and everything was okay. 9/11 happened. So in
Hmm.
between there, I did go to Kuwait in 1991. It wasn't Desert Storm. It wasn't Desert Shield. We were called Operation Positive Force. Everybody else went home. They put the Black Horse Regiment into Doha to keep Saddam from coming back.
Hmm.
That's what happened. In '93, I went to Somalia. We don't talk about Somalia. Everyone that hears that, oh, Black Hawk Down. Um, no, I was there from January to May before Black Hawk Down even happened, and it was just as bad as the movie portrays. I was a combat medic. We don't talk about Somalia. No, that's where my PTSD stems from. And I'm still at this point a studier. I didn't call myself anything. Not until '95. I have to think here. Yeah, it was '95 I started coming out in the open. Now, 9/11 changed everything if you were in the military. Bad enough
Hmm.
for the civilians that witnessed it or dealt with it here on the state side. I was in Germany, um, and I got pulled from my normal duties because at this point I'm a truck mechanic and a combat medic because there was a break in. I got out in '94 because Somalia pretty much screwed all of us up. Um, and went back in 7 months later. I took a 7 month break, basically went back in. Had to switch my job, so I became a truck mechanic. But every unit I was in was short or didn't have medics, so I was used as a combat medic as well. Um, so this is where it got really political. Up till this point, I just did my thing. Everyone did their thing. We had the issue in '99 where Representative Barr came out and said Wicca is not a religion, witchcraft's not a religion, and of course, Governor of the time, Bush, said, "I would encourage you don't have witchcraft in the military," and obviously that got swept away.
Right.
Um, so not a big deal. In 2001, I was in Charlie Company, 701st, and I was riding school buses with full full tactical gear, loaded machine gun, because we had our kids going to Würzburg from Kitzingen to go to school. That's where the military, the army school was.
Hmm.
Or yeah, I think it was all army. So our kids were going to school in Würzburg. I had to ride, and other soldiers had to ride different buses to protect the kids because they were scared Taliban would attack in Germany. In fact, 9/11, I was on a detail putting up military tents for medical exercise, and we got pulled and told report straight back to your units. We just America's been attacked, and from that point forward, we were on straight lockdown. So I did the school bus thing for about a week. My daughter was on the bus. She wanted me to ride on her bus, naturally. And then I got pulled to installation security. So I was on the gate running soldiers. Because at this point in time, I'm a sergeant. So I was a sergeant of the guard for the installation security. Doing bomb sweeps, checking IDs. We have a gunner with a gun pointed at you as you're pulling into the gate. Um, about the end of that tour of duty, I guess you would call it, my first sergeant said, I've sent you to Bravo Company because they need more good NCOs in Bravo Company. I'm like, okay, great. I don't like change. So my first day in Bravo Company, the first sergeant. So the first sergeant, so you have a commander, which is your officer. They're always captains in a unit. The first sergeant's kind of like the enlisted secretary. He's the highest in that company. I keep forgetting I have to explain these things a little bit. Maybe. So the first sergeant comes out and he says, if you're a Wiccan or a Satanist, you are not going to practice in my barracks. You're not going to practice in my company area. But if you are a Christian, I will make sure you have time to go to church.
Yeah, that's kind of not. That's
Ah,
not,
oh my God. I was like, really? You're going to
what
step on my
what
foot?
year was that?
That would be 2001.
2001. Yeah, it's only what 24 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm like, huh, really? That's why they sent me to this company. Now, here's the kicker. What they didn't know is they just thought I'm just this um, sergeant that got moved from one company to the next, and I'm just here for them to use at their disposal. What they didn't know is I also worked for the battalion. I
Right.
was a battalion safety NCO, so I actually answered to the colonel and the major, the executive officer and the officer in charge of the whole battalion. Um, so as soon as they broke formation, I went straight to the training NCO and like, so I want the name of every soldier in this company that has listed on their personnel file pagan, Wiccan, witch, heathen, druid, anything pagan related. I want the name.
Right.
She's like, oh my God, shit. You're pagan, aren't you? I'm like, fuck yeah, I am. Now you're going to pay. And so that's a long story that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But that's what got me on the political side. When I got done with that company, with a big fight, but the colonel had my back and the major had my back, and we had the first ever Yule celebration on the airfield on the installation. We started pagan breakfasts because they have the Christian prayer breakfast where you don't have to go to PT. You get to go sit with a chaplain or whatever. So back it
Hmm.
up real quick. We don't have a pagan chaplain in the military.
Right.
There is none. They got Muslim, which they don't like having Muslim chaplains either, but they had to. So they allowed, I think, two Muslim chaplains in the entire military. Of course, Catholics, Christians, Jews, they all have their own chaplains. They will not give us a chaplain. There was a chaplain that tried. He actually, when we were in Iraq, and I never got to meet the guy, but there was a chaplain that wanted to be the first pagan chaplain or a Wiccan chaplain. And so he was going to use Sacred Well for his endorsing agency. Sacred Well wasn't at that time recognized by the military as an endorsing agency. So he got denied that. And once his Christian backer found out that he was turning pagan, they dropped him. So guess what? They had to kick him out of the military instead of, yeah. So that's the kind of fight we face in the military.
Right.
Um, so I left Germany. I went to Fort Lewis. I actually went to Fort Lewis on a compassionate reassignment for personal issues with my ex that we aren't going to get into. That's neither here nor there. But I went to Fort Lewis with the understanding I wasn't going to deploy anymore. So they sent me to the unit that hadn't deployed since World War II, 29 Signal. Well, guess what? For the first time since World War II, 29 Signal got orders to Iraq. So I went to Iraq. Um, and at this point in time, I knew what the political bullshit I had to pull, work through. I had to get a pagan sponsor or an endorsing agency, just like that chaplain did. And I went through Sacred Well. Sacred Well was at this point for DFGL, so a DFGL is a distinguished faith group leader.
Mm-hmm.
This is the replacement for, since we don't have a chaplain, you have to get a sponsor from a pagan organization, um, recognized by the military, have an army chaplain. I'll say I use army because that's what we are, but all of them do have to do the same thing. It's I think today the army has DRGL instead of DFGL, which is stupid. DRGL for distinguished religious group leader instead of faith group leader. The
Mm-hmm.
Air Force took over DFGL, so you still have to know that both terms. They're both mean the same damn thing. Um, so I got all this paperwork straightened out. Um, so when we got to Iraq, so in Blood, Iraq, we were there January '04 to January '05. That's where Desert Moon Grove started. So Desert Moon Grove was the group we had in Blood. Um, I'd say we had roughly 100 troops, airmen, and civilian contractors that came to our. When I originally started the group, it was going to be once a week.
Mm-hmm.
No, soldiers showed up every night. It became more of a morale thing. We did healing rituals for those who lost their friends or their leadership in convoy attacks. We honored the Sabbats. Uh, and what's cool about this kind of a group is you've got druids, you've got Wiccans, you've got witches. We had a Shinto, we had a Buddhist, all meeting in one spot, and
Right.
we learned from each other.
Yeah.
Um, that was the best thing, and it was the biggest morale. So initially, when I first started that group up, the chaplain, the installation chaplain, he's a major, I think, tried to convert me. I'm like,
Right.
no, no, no. Just let just let us do our pagan thing, and you'll be fine." And he said, "Well, I'm going to give you this spot inside our chapel compound where you guys can meet." A week later, there's a bunch of lumber piled up in the same spot that he said we could meet. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even go to the chapel anyway. I went to my E7, our motor sergeant, and was like, "Look, Can we meet in the shop?" He goes, "Yeah, go ahead." Hands down, absolutely. He used to be IG, so he knew exactly, military regulation and constitution. Obviously, we have to have a spot to meet, and if no one's going to give us that, yeah. So we met in my shop every night. Tully's Coffee donated like 20 pounds of coffee,
Nice.
beans. We had our own bean grinder. And because we were a signal unit, I had my own phone and my own internet because we had tactical satellites. We had that's what this unit was made for. Was to we did the biggest landline across the entire country of Iraq ever done. So I started reaching out because I mean at this point in time we've got 20 to 30 soldiers meeting every night,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's kind of cool. Let's chaplains do the same thing. They get all kinds of sponsors that send care packages and things like that. So I reached out. I reached out to DJ Conway. Became really good friends with her before her passing.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac Bonowitz.
Yep.
And this is '05 to '06. We're in Telefar. Had even more issues there. Um, but so Forest Moon Grove, we established in '04, '05 because there were so many civilians that wanted to support pagan troops that were pagan.
Right.
That we established that kind of as a network between military and civilian. And today it's still going strong. Not so much on the military side because it's really hard to find pagan groups in the military anymore. Um, Forest Moon was an endorsing agency for, oh God, I think at one time we had 13 groups that were across Iraq, Afghanistan, and Korea. Um, so, without going into too much of the politics, because well, if you want to get pissed off, I could. Because again, when we were in Telefar, we were supposed to be using this old chapel that all of a sudden mysteriously got locked, and they didn't give us a key. So it's like, huh, okay, fine, my chew. So a chew is a civilian housing unit, and it's a little mobile trailer that houses two people. And so it's just a whole. You probably seen them on the news during the when Iraq and Afghanistan were going. Just rows of these little housing units. Well, we had 30 soldiers outside my chew, and, and
Wow.
the, you know, one night the first sergeant comes over. He's Sergeant Cooper, come here. I'm like, what's up, Cop? He's, why are there all these soldiers in front of your chew? Your chew? I'm like, well, we don't have a spot to meet anymore, so they're meeting at my chew. We drink coffee and we talk.
Hmm.
Well, that that's not allowed. Like I'm going to UCMJ. I'm going to put UCMJ is Uniform Criminal. Oh God damn it, UCMJ Uniform Code of Military Justice. There we go. So he was talking about not really court martialing, but taking my rank, and I was like, you know what, do what you got to do because I know I've got this fight, and you know it
Hmm.
too. Okay, I mean, you walked, it got so bad with the battalion level that our own Christian chaplain, who loved us, he was in Mosul though, and that's a helicopter ride that he can't always take. I mean, we only saw him once the whole year, so. But he actually threatened the entire battalion staff with um, an IG complaint because of the way they were treating us behind our back. There were things going on at the battalion level we had no idea about, and I'm glad we didn't at the time. It would have just pissed me off. Um, and the other cool part, when we first started meeting outside my chew, we had these Arab looking guys walking by. They'd walk and take a shower every night. Um, and finally, one of them approached, and and he didn't speak English. And it turns out he was Turkish special forces. They came every night from that point on, and they were Shia Islam, but they had no problem with pagans, unlike the American military Christian side. You know, um, and it was cool because the first couple of nights they brought their little machine. They made us Turkish coffee, which is phenomenal. But then they're like, "You know how to make it? You make it yourself." I want Tully's. I was like, "Really? Okay." Um, so, any questions? Because that's the nutshell version. I don't want to go into the full version um, because of your time limit. We have a whole lot we can talk about, though. Well, you got any questions from this point?
Yeah, sure. I want to ask you about the pagan solidarity project, and that's spearheaded by Oberon Zell. And we just had Oberon on the same show, the Lone Wolf Show, and he talked about that. And I'm absolutely fascinated with how did you end up becoming a part of that organization and working with that, and what do you do as somebody that's involved in that?
Okay, yeah, that's a whole other long discussion. So Alberon and I have been, or I call him Oz. Oz and I have been Facebook friends, telephone friends. We've actually never met in person, but worked together on the pagan issues for quite a few years. Um, as far back as when Morning Glory was still alive, um, and that was devastating when she passed. Um, so we've all been watching the last few years, well, since 2016, um, when the whole political system shifted more into the dark side. Uh, and so I retired. I got medically retired at 19 and a half years, so they don't got to give me a pension. And so I got my bachelor's degree in Homeland Security, and I've been tracking extremist groups since I'd say 2012, 2014. Um, because I live in the East Gadget County community. And so, aside from the pagan community, I work on disaster response stuff up here. I'm a consultant with the sheriff up here on issues that I see and issues within Homeland Security uh, type issues that I see. We have 5 dams up here. So when you're talking disasters, we anyone that's familiar with this area knows Skagit River floods every year. We've got 5 dams up here. We've got landslides, power outages. The list goes on. Um, and now that we have a government that is trying to dismantle all those agencies that um, support disaster, and I don't even know if I can trust the Homeland Security side anymore because of who is running it. Everyone that's running our agencies are Trump loyalists and aren't always in the best interest of anything non-loyalists do. So we have threats of FEMA possibly disappearing. Well, I run a 501c3 called the East Gadget Disaster Response. That there goes a lot of the funding sources we might be able to get. So on the disaster side, that's devastating. So on the other side of this, we have a large pagan community up here as well, and this is a very conservative community. So and the pagan side aside, you have a large LGBTQ community up here that I would say is more threatened than the pagans for now. Um, so I guess it was January that I got an email from Abron about the pagan solidarity movement, and I went to the first Zoom because we have a Zoom meeting every Monday. And he kind of laid out the plan for his mission that we need to reach out to, the Christian nationalist movement by itself is maybe 30% of the population. It's large in number, but it's small. It's not a majority of the country. And it's definitely not a majority of the Christian faith because true Christians follow the peace and love of Jesus. They don't follow hate. That's not what Jesus taught. So and then as I missed a couple of the Zooms, but as it started developing more and more with Starhawk and Amber K and a lot of these big pagan names um, who have, larger followings, it started developing into, like you saw, or like he told you, the team side. Well, I guess my area is more of the intelligence and research side. So, yes, I've been tracking groups like the Black Robe Regiment, which is terrifying by itself. It's a breakoff of the Oath Keepers. I call them the Oath Breakers. That's what they are. Um,
Is that particular group harmful to contemporary pagans and witches? Are they violent towards pagans and witches, or are
the
they
Black
like,
Robe Regiment. So
yeah,
for
like,
now, I haven't been able to track them personally or specifically. I know we have two. They're known to infiltrate the Patriot Church. Well, we have one in Tacoma, one in Spokane. So the Black Robes Regiment is more, like I was saying, the oath breaker side of a militarized military tactical training militia in the church to go against anything that goes against God. Well, you interpret that the way you want to. I've personally been threatened as an LGBT ally. That well, if you support them, then you need to be killed right along with them. And that is the attitude of these people. Um, and we've got these types up here who have no problem if the word ever came out that the church was going to start killing LGBT people, then so be it. They're going to go out and do it. Well, pagans are right there next to them. Most of us, in the pagan community, I won't say all, but most are LGBT accepting or allies if we're not LGBT. So yes, there's a big threat. All it takes is from the top to say, okay, yeah, let's just start killing them all. And you don't know if that day ever comes. I would say if that day ever came, we're in civil war. That's just my perception of it, because I think a majority of the country has more of a live and let live attitude. If it's not bothering them, then why is it bothering everyone else? Same with same sex marriage. You've got, oh my God, I'm a Christian. I can't sign that license. Well, then get the hell out of public service. Your religion does not trump, no pun, but this does not override your job. It shouldn't. Whether you're public service or whether you have a bakery and a same-sex couple wants you to bake a cake, that shouldn't have been turned around. Then get the hell out of the baking industry if you can't do your job. Um, so that's where I'm at. When the war on Christmas happened, I was sitting in the dining facility in Iraq watching CNN when they're talking about, oh my God, Starbucks doesn't have the right color cups, and they say Happy Holidays on them. Are you serious? I'm sitting here fighting a war, and you're worried about Happy Holidays versus Merry Christmas? Uh, so, yeah. And like you were talking before the show, I think in some aspects, the military has gotten better, in that heathens can grow their beard. Um, but on the flip side of that, you're still going to have. Uh, so look up the MRFF, the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, run by Mikey Weinstein. I'm kind of his pagan contact for if he has pagan issues. He is a law firm that is known in the news for going after Bibles in VA clinics. He's known for going after units that require their soldiers to pray. And yes, this does happen. But constitutional violations, he has, I think, 90% of his clientele that comes to him are actually Christians who know the difference between what's right and what's wrong within the Constitution. So he's on my speed dial if we have pagan issues within the military. So it's going to be cool to see where the solidarity movement goes. Right now, I know we're in the process. Uh, Myself and the other two or three that are within our team. Again, we still have Zooms every Monday, and we're still tracking. I just so I use YouTube a lot for my tracking because they don't hide it on YouTube. They're proud and open about kill the witches or whatever it is on YouTube. They don't hide it, so it makes it easy to track. It's the ones that hide it we have to worry about. But I know there's a hate group forming in Tennessee. I know the groups or the teams that went to help with the natural disaster in there's the fires and floods in North Carolina. There were two groups, one called the Red Trucks, and if you weren't Christian, they did not help you. And that comes straight from one of our intelligence guys who experienced it. There was another one. In fact, I think it was the Red Trucks. that would take your name and put it on a list, and they'd say, "Oh, we can't wait for the revolution because we'll be visiting you again." Like,
Hmm.
huh? Yeah, that's a direct threat. Um, and there was another group that came back, and because he wasn't Christian, and they saw something in his house they didn't like, they broke his water main.
Hmm.
And
I want to say thank you for Jamie Lynn Denton out there in Reno, Nevada, watching the show in the chat room, and she says thank you for your service. Um,
anytime, I wouldn't change a damn thing.
Also in the chat room, have you followed any of the
Oh my
activities?
God,
If Greg
Greg Luck.
Lockie, pastor of Global Vision Bible Church in Tennessee, that has a big online following, and who regularly threatens pagans and witches. So what's
Yep,
going on
yep.
with
Oh,
that?
I'm. Trust me, Greg Locke's one of the. Yep. In fact, I'm going to out three witches. There's three witches in my congregation. It turns out he was making. Well, we all know he was making the shit up anyway. But it turns out I can't remember if he was having an affair with one of them, and they threatened to out him. So he comes up and says, "Oh, there's three witches, and I've got their addresses." Yeah, he's the same one that says autism is demon possession and kids shouldn't be on medication, and he says a whole lot of crazy shit. Now, does he believe it? I don't know. I don't know if it's all theatrical. It doesn't matter, theatrical or not. The minute you have someone in a leadership position come out and talk this kind of crap, you don't know who's going to do what. You really don't, because anyone that follows him is more radical than he is.
Hmm.
So that is a threat. You got Greg Locke. You've got, well, I didn't bring my notebook, did I? I've got a whole list. So I'm actually going to put. So you've got the Patriot Front. You've got the Proud Boys. You've got talk about Proud Boys. They all loaded up in a U-Haul and went to Idaho to attack a Pride parade a couple years ago. One of them actually was from my community. So that's the kind of people we have hiding within our community here. Um, and of course,
Jamie
um,
Lynn Denton, excuse me,
yep.
Mr. Eric. Jamie Lynn Denton in the chat room says, my father was in the Air Force and encouraged me to follow my pagan roots. My grandfather was in World War One and Two, and a lot of my uncles were in the military and they were Christian. Some of my friends said it was tougher being in the service as a pagan.
Um, I would agree. Uh, Absolutely. Like I said, I think it's gotten maybe better. I don't know. It's been 15 years. Yeah. Uh, but when I was in, oh, absolutely, it was rough. And okay, let's go back. Let's go back in time for a second. So back into Kitchigan, when I was trying to get the pagan breakfast set up, I went to actually before that, one of the soldiers I talked to in Bravo Company, who was Wiccan, said, he tried to talk to the chaplain, but the chaplain called him a Satanist. I'm like, "Huh, really? Okay. Well, let's go have a little. I'll go have a little chat with the chaplain," and I did. And he wasn't in, so he had a staff sergeant that was there. He's like, "Well, what do you want? Maybe I could help you." I was like, "Probably not." Um, and I told her, apparently the chaplain believes Wiccan is Satanism, and it's not. Satan is actually an Abrahamic religion concept, not a pagan one. Um, and she, so you're here to educate the chaplain. I'm like, well, if that's what he thinks, and yeah, I guess so. Well, her and I butted heads a couple times after that. But after talking to this chaplain, he's like, well, I think the young man was confused because I never said that. Like, well, what exactly did you say? Um, this chaplain, after I brought up the pagan breakfast idea, was falsely excited about it, and I'll support it, and we'll actually sponsor it for you. And I saw him a couple of days later, and Sergeant Cooper, I'm so sorry. Um, we can't have a prayer breakfast anymore, so I can't sponsor your event. I'm like, huh, interesting. So I went and, I went to the XO's office, the major, and he's like, so what did the chaplain tell you? I was like, well, he told me he can't have Christian prayer breakfast anymore. Like, hold the hell up. He's flipping his calendar. There's one right there. He's lying. I'm going to string him up. He's like, you're going to have your pagan breakfast. Don't worry about it. Well, to get the Yule celebration on the airstrip, we had to go talk to the colonel. And apparently they thought it wasn't going to go very well because as soon as we walked into the colonel's office, he's like, "Oh shit, Sergeant Cooper, I haven't seen you in a while. How's it going?" And they're like, "Oh, you know Sergeant Cooper?" Um, so he's like, "Well, I can talk to the installation commander, and I don't think it's going to be a problem. So why is there a problem here, there, Chaplain?" And this little E6 says, "Well, we're kind of concerned because they have candles that they use in the airfield, and it might catch fire." It's like, wait a minute, don't you have candles you burn in your chapel? This is from the colonel. And we always have somebody there watching them. I was like, oh, wait, let me interject here, sir. He's like, absolutely, Sergeant Cooper. And I'm like, so when anyone in the pagan community is using candles, they are constantly watching them. In fact, there's something called a 9 knot candle where you burn it down. It's in little balls, knots, and you burn it down one knot one day, and you put it out. You burn it down, and so you're never going to have candles outside, especially unattended. So yeah, I mean but that's the kind of attitude you have. Anything they can do to throw a monkey wrench in a religion that they all think is demonic and satanic and yada yada yada. But I always have to explain to them, it's the Abrahamic religions that created Satan based on the Greek god Pan. That's really where they got the concept from. In fact, if you
Yes.
take the term daemon, it started in the old Greek, the ancient Greek cultures, and a daemon was an earth-based benevolent spirit. It wasn't malevolent at all in the beginning. Um, so they need education, but the education is there. They just don't look at it because they don't want to. And that's what I faced. I can say that with personal experience. Um,
So you mentioned Greg Lockie. You mentioned like the Proud Boys, and it's your cup of tea. It's what you do is research and intelligence of these malicious white nationalist groups that can or can't be, I guess, attacking, contemporary earth-based spirituality groups, covens, witches, pagans. If if they do attack particular groves or covens or organizations, what's the best course of action? I mean, and are these groups going to get? Is their trajectory going to be more violent as time goes on because of the political shifting? Like, what should the pagan people, what should the witchcraft community do in the event if they are getting attacked? I mean, I know that it's happening in North Carolina because
and
what,
South Carolina.
right.
Um,
So what's the course of action? You got some white nationalist hate groups showing up at pagan events. They're picketing. They started yelling and screaming. What does a pagan do?
okay, so if you so to unpack that, because that is deep. That's a you have and gate gatekeeping aside, you've got a lot of gatekeepers in the pagan community.
Yes, you do.
I've been. How can you be military in the military as a pagan? What about harm none? Well,
Yeah.
every
Good
culture,
point.
every religious culture has had a warrior sect.
Hmm.
So consider the military pagans your warrior sect. Consider a lot of the Druids your warrior sect. Consider your Vikings, even though they're heathen. And
Right.
there's a lot of debate between heathen and pagan. Heathens don't like to be called pagans. They are heathens, but they are all still in the same fight to an extent, because we've had a lot of heathen groups that have been infiltrated by the neo Nazis. Look at the QAnon shaman,
Yep.
prime example. We've got them trying to infiltrate heathen groups in the military. So we have our own training package actually made just for identifying that. Most of these are folkish traditions. Um, so getting back to your question, I'm a firearm advocate. I'm within reason. I believe education is needed to have a firearm, and I don't believe AR-15s or military grade weapons should be in the hands of civilians. I don't own an AR-15. I wish I did though, but honestly, um, I would have armed security. I hate to say it that way, but this is the age we live in. I would have armed security. If you're going to do a public event, have armed, licensed, legal security. If anything, someone with a concealed weapon carry.
Right.
Um, and you know what? I do have a few guns, but I prefer knives. And I know every pagan's got a knife.
I mean, has it really come to that where our pagan gatherings, we have to have somebody there packing? I mean, I've been to a few different gatherings and festivals around the country, and it's not something that you see. I mean, most of the pagan community and the craft communities are very, very nonviolent. So it's
They
just
are.
like it's odd to it would be odd to see somebody like I'm security here. And I mean, but maybe
But
it's
here,
coming to that. Maybe it's going to come to that. I want to get to somebody in the chat room, but I want
okay.
to keep talking about what we should do if some of these extremists,
No,
start
absolutely.
nipping at us. Jamie Lynn Denton from Reno, Nevada. When I first encountered this nut job, I went head to head with this Greg Lockey on X,
Lock.
which I think is a Twitter platform. I'm not sure, and got
Yep.
myself banned due to educational purposes. I even told him off on the drama talk, TikTok
Yep.
probably as well.
Yep.
I'd back anyone against any of these pastors that might get me in trouble someday. Until then, if there is, I definitely want to know about it. I will always do my best to protect us all and to defend. I mean, even with, I mean, how does one defend yourself like on social media? I mean, you're going to have people that go into, I've had people into some of my teaching groups on Facebook, and they'll, you need Jesus, you're all satanic, and da da da, and you just got to kind of block them and just kind of say, we love you. This probably isn't, but I mean,
So
like,
two things. Don't feed the trolls.
right? Don't feed the trolls.
Block them and move on.
Very good
You're
advice.
not gonna convince any of them, whether they're on the right, whether it's a mega political fight. Just move on. They're not worth your energy. They're not worth your time. Um, and I left X. I left X about 6 months ago.
Mhm.
It's just no. Um, having PTSD, my anger level is always right here anyway. I take medication; it keeps me calm.
Mhm.
Um, but so I'll get to you. I'll get to your extremist point. Um, and we discussed it in another show while I was in the chat room. Get your gardens going. Get them going strong. Get chickens. If you think about how your life is, and if you can grow it, make it, or call it, do it. If you don't have to buy it, because shit's going to get worse. Um, but anything you can do, if you've got property, get some pigs. Learn how to butcher them out. YouTube is great for educational videos like that. If you eat meat, I know you're saying
Mhm.
you don't eat meat. I'm a red meat eater. It's
Oh, I mean,
part of
I
my
eat.
blood.
I mean, I eat meat. I mean, I eat meat. I'm just trying to alleviate some of the red meat where it just
I
seems like
got you.
it's
So chicken,
can't be enough. Yeah.
fish, even pork. Um, so yeah, and um, 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 situational awareness. Be aware of your surroundings.
Right.
Um, and getting back to, so if you're in your own home, I've got a pentacle on my truck. I don't care. What are they going to do?
That's right. What are they going to do?
So my point is, if you're at your own home, if you have a pentacle on your window, if you have anything pagan related in your yard, who cares? Um, so I agree with Jamie. Defend, cleanse, shield, etc. Know how to get away if needed. Um, and I actually have a self defense instructor up here in my county that has offered free classes to the LGBT kids, especially. And because
Right.
he's asking, do I make it LGBT only? And I told him, no, break it down by kids, break it down by adults. Because if they're LGBT, they can get into an adult class without exposing what their preference is. But kids and adults should be separate when it
Hmm.
comes to that. So yeah, he's doing self defense as well as knife fighting classes for free up here. And that'll be coming up after May. But yeah, if you can take a self defense class, absolutely know how to use a knife, situational awareness. And I get pagans oftentimes are peaceful. They don't want, but set up a security team. Either way, set up a security team and make sure another person is documenting everything. Videos don't lie. So even if something drastic does happen, you have it documented. And befriend your local law enforcement. I know the group in South Carolina that was having issues being harassed or whatnot. Come to find out, they do have a good working relationship with the law enforcement in the area. So make sure you have somebody on your side within law enforcement. Document, document, document. Make sure your permits and everything are legal. So, like when if you're going to go to a park, make sure you have your right permitting, so they have nothing legal to come at you with, because it is your religious, it's First Amendment. It's your religious right to go out in public and practice your faith. So they can't do nothing legally. They can go protest, sure, that's their right as well. But the minute they start interfering, that's not their right. So document everything. Lawsuits make a lot of these people back away too. Um, so again, lawsuits. I don't know. Lady Liberty League might be able to help. I know you reached out to them once before, and they pick and choose which cases they're going to take on. Um, so I don't know what to say about that part of the legal challenge. If you did want to go sue, but yeah, we're living in crazy times. Read the Project 2025 document. Look up National Apostolic Reformation, because that's actually the movement that is pushing ahead Project 2025. And there's a great documentary series called NAR. You can find it on YouTube. Look for the 2 hour version because it's got all of them condensed into one. I would look up the documentary Bad Faith. Look up the documentary God and Country. Look for the documentary, not the movie. um, and look up the documentary on the military side called Against All Enemies. And those are 4 excellent documentaries that will kind of enlighten you on what's going on. But yeah, if you're
So
comfortable,
we're getting to the
huh?
bottom of the hour.
Right.
Do you have any parting words of wisdom um, for pagans out there walking the path, for witches walking the path, for magical folks walking the path, that may or may not want to go to the military, or perhaps the military's watching? Um, and parting words of wisdom.
Well, real quick too, look up Pagan Solidarity, pagansolidarity.us if
Hmm.
you want to jump into our Pagan Solidarity movement, because we are reaching out to um, Christian churches that are non-Christian nationalists,
Very cool.
as well as Freedom from Religion Foundation. There's a lot of organizations we're reaching out to.
That website is streaming on the ticker tape on the
Right.
bottom there.
There we go. Okay. But parting wisdom, yeah, get to know your neighbors, get to know your community. And you know, I'm on board with what Abram was saying on his interview that, yeah, put your, I don't wear a pentacle. I wear the world tree, or Draco is what they call it.
Right.
I'm probably butchering the name.
Interesting. I think.
Right.
I think.
But you know, don't be afraid of who you are. Don't go back into the broom closet because they'll
Right.
deal. You know, I know there's counterintelligence that are tracking what we do as well. So if they want to know you're pagan, they're going to know you're pagan, whether you expose it or not. So yeah, just be aware of your surroundings. Have a plan. Um, have a plan anyway. You should always have an emergency action plan for disaster or attack. We've got an extensive one that goes into plan A, B, C, D, E, but that's part of the military side. But was a great chat, and great finding your TV show. You know, like I told you before, finding Witchcraft TV. This is my grounding source. Because understand, I have 7,000 videos to peruse through on all kinds of hate bullshit. And it drives you nuts. So yeah, I have to take a break and go watch it. Go watch witchcraft music or whatever you've got on witchcraft TV and relax. And my kids help me do that too.
Right. Well, hey, on behalf of Witchcraft TV and our board and our viewers and the entire pagan and witchcraft magical communities, you are a pagan hero.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and we love you very, very much. You are a warrior, and we love you, man. Thank you for coming on the Lone Wolf Show. Thank you for supporting Witchcraft TV.
Oh, it was a blast.
And for our viewers, make sure you keep it right here on www.witchcrafttv.online. We are fair representation of all pagan, witch, and magic